You know, a lot of people accuse the Albanese government of hating Christianity, but you can't accuse them of having abandoned religion. They've just provided $300,000 essentially for research on how to protect animism and ancestor worship. The Daily Telegraph has reported that an Indigenous academic has been given $300,000 of taxpayer money to, and I quote, explore how Indigenous songlines have protected whales and dolphins over hundreds of years. Well, I guess that's money well spent in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Of course, I jest, but it does tell you what the Albanese government regard as sacred. Now, the grant was made to Dr. Jodie Edwards, who's studying this ahead of a wind farm being built 20 kilometres off the coast of Illawarra. Chris Bowen said, with regards to these licences for wind farms being awarded, that project developers must engage in specific consultation with traditional owners. He said licences will only be awarded to developers whose proposed projects do the most to support Australia's workforce, energy security, protect the environment and, here's the crucial bit, and cultural heritage of First Nations communities. Now, you might be wondering, what's cultural heritage of First Nations communities 20 kilometres off the coast, deep under sea? Well, it all comes back to these Indigenous songlines, which, as explained by the academic, whales are regarded as sacred, in fact, as tribal ancestors, and are to be treated with the same respect you would give to an immediate family member. And songlines are those paths out at sea which creator beings traversed during the dreaming. The funny thing about this, Caleb and Liz, is the same people who will be applauding this and saying, oh, it's fantastic, the government's giving an Indigenous academic $300,000 to investigate songlines from the dreaming, will be the same people who get outraged that the government funds Catholic schools because what about the separation of church and state? We haven't lost our religion, we've just abandoned Christianity and we're returning to paganism. Yeah,
well, I mean, she's investigating a form of mythology that we just happen to like in this country at the moment because we wouldn't dare say anything bad about their version of religion, right? As you say, some things are sacred and others aren't in the eyes of the left and the government. This puts me in a really difficult spot because this woman is opposed to the offshore wind project. And so if it is her $300,000 worth of research funded by the Albanese government that actually manages to eventually scupper this project, then I'm actually all for it. So I'm in a little bit of a difficult position here. But it is patently ridiculous that you would hand over that amount of money for someone to look into something so abstract. I mean, you know, if we're talking about songlines on land, and for Aboriginal people, on land songlines were essentially like travel routes that they would take. And there's famously one that goes for 3,000 kilometres to Uluru, and they had sort of marked out what were the right things to eat and whatever. You know, I'm sure back in the day that was of great use to them. But a songline for whales 20 kilometres offshore, I'm not sure has a great deal of bearing on anything. But if it does the job, you know, it doesn't matter how you get to the destination.
All the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard, the people who hate these kinds of developments in their area, you need to form some sort of alliance with these Indigenous groups and be like, you and me, we can make this work for us. Because all you have to do these days is find some sort of sacred rock. There was some trees, the birthing trees, that scuppered another project. Because these are sacred now, can't touch them. You could really make it work for you, especially the farmers who are finding this problematic. If I was a farmer and I had the government trying to get some of my land for their ridiculous power lines, I'd just be like, right, I need some Indigenous people right now to find something incredibly sacred. I'll check out my pastures and tell me what I can work with here. You can make this really, really work for yourself.